Welcome to Beyond the Limelight, presented by Master Effects. My name's Ryan. I'm Director of Marketing here. I'm joined by Vince, the owner of Master Effects. We are back from a brief hiatus for another season, summer 2021. We're feeling really good. We know everyone else out there is feeling good too. If you're new to this show, thank you so much for joining us. Our mission with Beyond the Limelight is to go behind the scenes with the industry's most influential people, share some expertise, gain some knowledge, and inspire the next generation of artists and entrepreneurs. So if you like what you hear, you gain something from the show, let us know. Leave a review, tell your friends, tell your family. We're excited to bring you more content in the coming months. So without further ado, we have a very special guest today, Vince.
Yeah, it's an honor to have who we have on the show today. We'd like to welcome a very special guest, the CEO and head of creative at DX7 Design, the legendary Tom Sutherland. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time, and we're excited to talk to you a little bit today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you started in the industry when you were very young. Did you always want to be a lighting designer, or was there something else you had in mind that just, how did it all start?
So I started with secondary school, what we call in Britain, when you're from 12. I started seeing people like doing the school productions and things and like lighting on that. And I thought, that looks fun. So was fortunate enough to live in the outskirts of London. So sent letters to kind of different West End shows, The Lion King being one of them, and the BBC. Got invited to like a Sunday matinee of The Lion King. And the kind of backstage lighting team took me under their wing for a show, was helping them kind of with all of the backstage stuff. So for a 12-year-old kid, it was kind of like, wow, this is incredible. And then a couple of different lighting designers who were based in the TV world got in touch, responded to my letters. One of those guys is a guy called Mark Kenyon, who did Strictly Come Dancing, our version of Dancing with the Stars back in Britain. And he just kind of invited me along at weekends and stuff to whatever he was doing. So did that pretty much up until my 16th birthday when there was a programmer on a show for ITV on a Saturday night who went sick, and I was kind of there trailing for the previous shows, and they turned to me and said, Tom, do you think you could do it? So I sat in the seat on my 16th birthday and programmed this TV show for ITV, and the rest was kind of history. One thing led to another. Met the right people, got in with the right crowds, then eventually kind of around 26 came out to the US and started working on stuff out here.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that really is. Was it intimidating at all at 16 years old to be behind that console, knowing that there's that many people watching?
Yeah, I was crapping myself. But to be fair, I think when you're that young, you don't really have the anxieties that you do when you get older. Like the world's your oyster. Like you kind of are just running on the adrenaline of doing what you're doing without any of the fears that you kind of get when you get older. So,
absolutely.
So just kind of in it.
Yeah.
And I could imagine back then, I don't want to say back then because it's really not that long ago, but writing letters seems to be so much more personable these days, right? Do you think?
It was the days before heavy emails and stuff, and it was still, it doesn't seem that long ago now, but yeah, the letters fell into the right hands of the right people, and I kind of got chances. And it was very much in the days when people were kind of leaving the television networks to become freelance. So it was the early days of kind of figuring out that freelance market. So people were kind of very receptive to helping younger people come on. And I think it's much harder these days because everyone is kind of freelance, and people coming out of college need industry people to help them get a foot in the door, because realistically that's the only way how it really happens now.
Yeah. And speaking of college, you did go briefly to school for lighting, correct?
So I didn't. I left school. I did what we call our A-levels, which is kind of between 16 to 18. And I was actually skipping off school to go and work as a technician in the studios and stuff. And And I remember I was studying briefly for a year drama, media, and law. And the law teacher phones my parents one day and is like complaining that I'm never in class. And I kind of convinced my parents. I was like, "Well, look, I'm at the BBC. I'm working. Like, just let me do it." So, so they let me leave school early, and then I had the option of whether to go into the Brit School. Which is like a performing arts run, the same people who do the Brit Awards and things. And I was kind of in a position where I was surrounded by the right people. People were giving me offers. Like, even if I wasn't working, I was happy to go up and help and get stuck in on any shows just to gain more experience. So that's kind of what I ended up doing.
And that's awesome. And then where in that mix did you start DX7?
So DX7 started, it must have been when I was around 23, 24. I started getting asked to do things like the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent and all of those kind of the audition stages of those shows back in Britain. And I had a business partner back there, and we kind of decided to go at things together and create DX7. And then we kind of went our own separate ways a couple of years later, and DX7 gradually kind of came over to the US, and I hung on to it, and we've kind of built the company now. So there's myself, Joe Holdman, who's my kind of right-hand man and business partner. And then I've got Hunter and Jasmine as well, who work with us and pull everything together.
That's incredible. And for those people that are listening that don't know, can you give us all that DX7 does for production?
So we're lucky, and I count myself genuinely lucky. We're able to do. We're in several different markets, whether it's the Middle East, China, Europe, the US, bits in Australia, and we've worked across live music, events, television, all of those sectors. So we get a real insight into how different sectors of the industry work, which I absolutely love, because it means that we're constantly challenging like the rules of television, for example. Like, who says that you can't bring in rock and roll elements and break the rules of what's naturally been done in television for years? Like, pushing the boundaries, not taking the easy way, making sure that we constantly reinvent ourselves and make ourselves as a company at the forefront of kind of what we do is very important to me and the team as well. We all, for example, we're drafting up the VMAs at the moment, and we've gone through 3 different separate versions of a design before we've even got to a kind of budgeting phase, because I want to make sure that the one that we land on is right. And I want to make sure that we've tossed out all of the ideas that aren't working first before we get to the one that's right. And just constantly doing that. I mean, the guys in the office hate me because we're constantly drafting stuff. But
and I'm sure nowadays, with how demanding content is on TV, especially with last year, you have to push the envelope. You have to make sure that you're keeping people engaged, not only in live experiences but also virtual as well. Correct?
Yeah, 100% across the board. And within kind of lighting, it's like you have a set design and you have video content, which kind of creates the scene, but lighting always provides the emotion. And you can really transform an audience, whether that's in person or on camera, by what's involved in a lighting design and how you look at something. So doing that is something that I kind of personally really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at all your beautiful work, I didn't even hear any music, and I was just like in awe of just the way that some of your symmetry is, and the geometry of the way that you placed your fixtures is just unbelievable. So amazing work. And to you and your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great job. Thank you.
And kind of building off that, you do a lot of work internationally, obviously. Here you have offices in Shanghai and London. Do you ever find that the cultures that you're working in ever inspire the lighting design that you're working on, or is it more of homogenous, where everything is your own style?
I would say the cultures are very. The cultures taught me a lot. And working, for example, I think the first time I went to China to consult on a project, I think around like 24 or something, and going into different cultures and accepting that people work in different ways, and it's not going to be as easy as it is working in the US or in Europe. You have to get the people there on board is the biggest issue. And you have to realize, like in China, for example, that they have their ways of doing things, and they're always pretty challenging. But at the end of the day, you have a product to deliver, but know where to pick your battles in any of these territories. Is kind of my philosophy and how we drive. But I mean, it depends. I look at each show individually, whether that's in Dubai or China or Europe or wherever. And I think that always starts from what the set design is, and you start with there, working with the set designer, and depending on if it's like more of a cultural event, you might rein things in necessarily, like we've done stuff in the UAE, which has been more culturally based and just tailored more to what the event is. But I always make sure with the designs that we have enough in the toolbox to create enough looks, to create the emotion, to create the theater. And so that's kind of the basis upon any design when I start.
Cool. And then your process, I read that you kind of start really, really high to where it almost scares the production manager when they look at the budget, and scale back from there. How did you discover that this process works best for you?
Because I always like start with the dream, like with anything. If you were building a house, then you build the biggest, fanciest house you can. Like with a lighting rig, it's the same. I'll start with what I would love this to be, even if I know it's not going to fit the budget. If the initial thought is there and the dream is there, then I can chip away at things, work with the vendor, but still protect the fundamental elements that I see make that design unique and make that design what it should be.
Yeah.
I love that. Start with the dream.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Hey.
I mean, it's if we're working for like big clients, then that's what they want. If they want the dream, then we'll find a way to get it there.
Yeah.
You know, and a big job of DX7 is probably taking the unimaginable and making it just happen, right?
Reality.
I mean, a reality. And it's in our industry, the entertainment world, you know, the designers are always trying to do stuff that's never been done to push the bar even higher.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I mean, a good example is just coming off American Idol, and that show's obviously had a designer for a very long time, and we're brought in to do new things and change things up. But you're working with teams of people who've been doing the show for very many years. So it's also, how do we get those people on side and those people on board to say, right, look, this might not be the easiest route, but it's got to look good. And that is a whole thing in itself, that working through the politics of those kind of shows in particular is a whole separate thing to the job, rather than just turning up with a plot and going, here, let's load this in.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question about a show specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong about anything here, but the last season of Dancing with the Stars, because there was no audience, was filmed a little bit differently. It was actually filmed in 360. How did that alter your design, and how did you basically, what's the word I'm looking for?
Execute?
Yeah. How did your design change to that?
So we initially, obviously with no audience, we had to fill the holes. So I worked with Florian Wieder on where we could put screens and where we could put like visual treats to fill the gap of the audience. And then any places where we couldn't really afford screens or they didn't really work, we filled with lighting products. So for example, Phil Hayes, who's the director, who's fantastic to work with, does lots of kind of Steadicam 360 shots. So I made sure like that we just had a wall of, I think, the relation darts on one end of the room that Joe, when programming, can fade up, and you just get this like massive starry twinkle that fills all of those spaces. And it's interesting, actually, I was on a call this morning with the team, and we all liked it so much with without the audience. It's kind of like, how do we integrate them back in, but with the amazing elements that we put in last year? Like, so we're trying to find that middle ground for this year of how how we still get what we achieved last year, but with the audience back.
Yeah, I guess it's a lighting designer's dream when you just have as much room as humanly possible to fill any space with fixtures or special effects that you want. So you're able to do.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow-up question is, has this inspired anything in the future? And you already answered that. So it sounds like it's kind of finding its way into some new designs in this new landscape. Do you feel like that kind of stuff, what we experienced last year, is propelling the industry to a different realm in terms of design?
I think so. I think what COVID did do is it made people figure stuff out pretty quickly. And I think that it made people look outside the box of, right, how do we solve this? How do we still create emotion in what we're doing, but without physical audiences there? And I think like a lot of designers who I spoke with and worked with, like I've looked up to lots of their work over the last year, and there's been a lot of people who figured stuff out pretty quickly. So I think we have learned a lot. Especially it's like the past year's taught us a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward, you've done so many different types of projects, like you said, festivals, television, tours, all these different kinds of things. Is there a certain project that DX7 or yourself hasn't worked on yet that you have in your sights and that you've dreamed of?
I mean, it's always like everyone would always say a Super Bowl or Olympics, right? I think that's the goal for all of us. So I'd say pretty much they would be the dream one day.
Yeah, that's not far-fetched at all. I love it.
And what does DX7 stand for?
So there's a funny story about this. There was the lighting console that I used to use, and it's a bit of a stupid story, but there was a button on it that was DX7, and it was always the one that I kept pushing, so it ended up falling off. And so it's the one I kept having to replace. So I just named the company after that.
I really like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a bit of a silly story. But.
Yeah, simple and sweet, though. I love it.
Yeah, simple and sweet for sure.
Yeah.
You need to make shirts with the button on it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Good idea. Yes, that's the next logo. I'm stealing that.
That's awesome.
Couple last questions that kind of silly in a sense, but I'm very curious. You won the Night of Illumination Award in 2018, correct? For, I believe it was Pitbull's Residency. One of the coolest awards you can win because they give you an actual sword, right?
Yeah. It's a weapon, that thing.
It's a weapon, yeah. Have you used it, or is it more like safely stored and displayed somewhere?
It's in the office, but I keep the thing on the end because it's sharp. Like that.
Yeah.
I keep the little guard on the end of it because that thing is really sharp and weighs a ton.
Really?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not a toy. It's like an actual katana sword.
Yeah, there was one designer who I can't remember who it was. He had to get it shipped to a house abroad somewhere, and it was pulled up by customs, and a whole thing happened about it. I can't remember who it was though, but I remember hearing the story.
Way cooler than your average trophy. That's for sure.
I agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I got to see. I'm gonna have to see a picture of the sword.
Yeah, it's nice.
And then one other thing I was curious about, you were quoted saying, "I always dream respectfully and I always dream big." Can you expand on what that means? Like, what does it mean to you to dream respectfully?
It means like I said, we start with the designs that are most likely over budget, and we're going to bump into rigging capabilities. We're going to bump into all of these other departments that need to do what they need to do down the line. So to me, it's important to listen to those people. Like, my number one rule is I know what I don't know. And if I don't know something, then I'll go to the people who do know, and I'm saying, look, this is the design. Tell me what is actually capable. Like, let's push it. But if it's physically not possible, then let's all work together and get it into a place that is physically possible, because at the end of the day, if it looks good, then we all look good. And so just working with people to always do that, and knowing what I don't know, and seeking advice from the people who do know what I don't know at the right points is how I kind of dream respectfully.
Yeah, I love that. And I honestly think that's probably one of the things that makes you so successful, is being able to admit there are things that you don't know and you're always willing to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
So, Tom, what inspires you, other than new fixtures and lighting? I mean, what do you do for fun? What do you like to do? What does a day to day in Tom Sutherland's life look like?
So when we were allowed to travel, I loved to get away. I did love the sneaky holiday here and there. Trying to stay healthy on this kind of work routine and lifestyle is something that I like to try and do also. And living in Los Angeles, just like beautiful hikes and stuff like that is quite important to my life. Making sure that you get the mental health check every now and then and clear your mind is important when you're kind of dealing with different time zones, different projects, different things. Just making sure you keep the you time in your life is something I always try and check.
Yeah, I think a sense of clarity is highly underrated.
Yeah, really, in this modern world as well, when especially working on different time zones, like you go to sleep to a bunch of emails, you wake up to a bunch of emails, and then you're doing it all throughout the day. It's like you just got to make sure that there are times where if you want a weekend, then turn the laptop off, like have a weekend. Like nobody's going to miss you if you don't answer an email for 48 hours. Like just keeping the lifestyle balance is important.
Awesome.
That's great. And now, who are your some of your mentors that you look up to in this industry?
So the people who brought me on as a lighting designer, a guy called Mark Kenyon in Britain, who was one of the guys who I wrote to. Another guy called Roger Williams, who's a television lighting designer, was very, very good to me. I've been very lucky with lots of kind of directors and producers who've had my back and have helped me, especially when coming over to the US. And then kind of people's work who I admire, like Baz Halpin is always a genius. Al Gurdon's work is absolutely wonderful to look at. And so, yeah, they've kind of been big inspirations as I've kind of grown up and has been looking at their projects and things.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Now, you're pretty young. DX7's only been around for, 6-7 years? Is that about right?
Right, yeah.
So you've already done so much, but what does the next 5 years look like for you?
I mean, to be honest, if someone said, like, how did this happen? Like, I don't really know. Like, we've worked hard and the team have worked incredibly hard, and we've all maintained a good posture. I like to think like we've always maintained respect, and none of us shout at people, and I always make sure like the crews are respected, and one thing has just led to another, and so I mean it's an exciting time for us. Like we're getting really like exciting projects. If I could see where we go, like the bigger shows, the better, the more exciting projects that come in, the better. I've never really set myself a goal as saying like, I want to be a creative director by the time I'm 35 or anything like that. I've kind of just taken everything as it's come and made sure that we deliver on those things. And naturally things have just kind of fallen into place. So I kind of like doing that.
It's working for you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds like your passion's just leading the race there. So,
Yeah, it is like making sure that everything we do is done correctly and in the right manner is just how I like to operate and how I like to work.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it.
Certainly is.
For sure. Any advice to some of these young entrepreneurs or young creative designers that want to do some of the stuff that you get to do?
Yes. My advice would be like, I spent so much of my youth like worrying about where I was going to get to and how I was going to get there. And that would cause kind of stress and anxiety and stuff. And I would say like, don't worry, like focus on what you're doing, make the right connections, make sure that you're nice to people is number one. Make sure that you ask questions if you don't know something, because ultimately that gets your respect. If you try and pretend that you know, people aren't going to respect you who know what they're doing. And just work hard and it will come. is my work hard, be nice, and just stay respectful, and then it will come.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great advice. And again, it's worked very well for you. You've done so many amazing things so far. We're excited to see what the future holds for DX7.
Oh, thank you.
We're excited to meet you too. Hopefully, we can catch you at a trade show later this year. Now that things are coming back
Fingers
a little
crossed.
bit. Yeah,
right. Fingers crossed.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great. Well, is there anything you'd like to share with some of the fans of the show? Is, they should follow you on Instagram and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the DX7 Instagram that we kind of try and keep on top of, and the Facebook page. So give us a like.
Sounds good. And how about this? Any cool stuff we should keep an eye out for that you're working on that you could talk about?
Yeah, the VMAs is kind of our next big up and coming thing. So yeah, we're kind of well into the design phase at the moment. It's I believe it's 30 years of MTV, so they're going to try and do a huge amount of live acts, which is a bit petrifying, but kind of a fun challenge. And I think where it's heading currently, it's going to be quite a fun show. So that's something to look out for. September the 12th, I believe, is the
Awesome.
date for that.
September the 12th, VMAs. Make sure you tune in and watch this man's beautiful work
Yes.
at play and his team.
Yes. Thank you, Tom, so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you,
been a
guys.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's lovely to chat with you. Take care.
And thanks to all our listeners. We will see you next time.
Yeah, till next time.
Cheers.